to say it. Somebody should. Let's talk about tool time. Let's talk about bum wine, yeah. You're asking the questions that nobody could. Like where are the bone thugs and are they in harmony? Help for Snowman.
Hey everybody, welcome to a show. Today, well, we've got a couple things. We have my harrowing tale of going to urgent care, and then another harrowing tale of when I maybe should have gone to urgent care and didn't, all within like a 4-day span. So let's just get right into it. So it was a Friday. Day like any other day. And I had gone for a little jog and I came back. Now, you probably haven't heard about this because, you know, a story like northeastern Colorado being very windy is like not an exciting story, right? It's like maybe some people saw, I don't know, a fucking TikTok of like a trampoline flying around the neighborhood or something. Can you imagine that? That would be like one of the worst ways to die, I think, is like crushed by, or, you know, just completely poleaxed by a fucking trampoline during a really windy day. And you're like, well, I'm glad that I got killed by something, you know, so necessary. Like, definitely these guys needed to have this black piece of fabric that's bouncy that they probably, you know, the kids probably spent a grand total of 2 hours on in their entire lives. And their friends always want to do it. Like, whenever I had a friend who had a trampoline, I was like, I don't understand why you're not on this all the time. You know what I mean? They'd be like, do you want to eat a snack or something? And I'm like, yeah, maybe we should eat it on the trampoline. Or like, oh, do you want to do a sleepover? Yeah, maybe we should sleep out on the trampoline. That sounds fun. You know what I mean? Like, I was just like, ooh, trampoline. I had a friend who had one and it was like inset into the ground. For some reason, my dumb fucking dad was like, no trampolines unless they're like inset into the ground. You know what I mean? If it's an above ground trampoline, then you can't do it. But if it's set into the ground, you can do it. I can only think of a couple reasons why he might say that. One is like, maybe, well, I think this is a reason someone might say that, but not him, because I don't think he was parenting savvy enough to come up with this maneuver, which is to be like, well, if I tell my kids they can be in a trampoline as long as it's in ground, they'll fucking never be in one. You know what I mean? Because nobody has that. And then more likely, I don't know, he probably had some experience with that at like a gymnastics center or something and had some perception that that was somehow safe. You know what I mean? I will say this, on the in-ground trampoline I jumped on, it was not as large in circumference and so not as bouncy as a above ground trampoline. But I don't think that had so much to do with it being in ground. I think it was just, you know, smaller, a different trampoline. So it probably was fairly safe. But anyway, yeah, just I would not want to get killed by a trampoline. It's like getting killed by someone riding a jet ski or a snowmobile, you know, in an area that does not necessitate a snowmobile. And you're just like, well, that's cool. Some guy's fucking tooling around. This seems like something maybe I've outgrown, and I don't know if I want to say I'm too mature or if it, because I hesitate to say I'm too mature for anything. But like going to a thing and then driving a little car around in that thing is not really something I've done a lot as an adult. It's not something I miss. You know what I mean? I'm just like, I don't know, man. Like if I'm going to go drive a couple hours to then drive a jet ski around, maybe I could just like play Mario Kart. You know what I'm saying? The hassles, the other things to do it. It just doesn't seem that fun to me, but maybe I'm wrong. So But that's the kind of crazy wind we had, like, outhouses flying away, wedding getting destroyed, that kind of windy day. So I'm out jogging. I used to always say out running, but now I just call it jogging because I'm like, let's be real. In that part in 8 Mile where Eminem's like, you got to stop living up here and start living down here. And I'm like, yeah, I should start living down here. So I'm out for a jog and I get in the back with a giant tumbleweed, just like slams into me. But it didn't hurt or anything. It's like a tumbleweed weighs nothing. That's why they tumble so good, guys. It's a combination of having a lot of pokey, weird shaped branches that let them tumble and weighing nothing. That's a good combo. It's like if you took a piece of styrofoam and you know what a fucking tumbleweed is. Why am I explaining this? So, and then I get home and our HOA has a garbage can at the clubhouse. And I recognize when I say this sentence, because when I said it later at the urgent care, I was like, this makes it sound like, I'm living a very fancy life. And I'm like, but it's not. I mean, there's a garbage can, a wheelie garbage bin at the clubhouse where I live. And the clubhouse where I live is not like fancy. I mean, I guess you can have parties there and stuff, apparently. And I'm assuming there's like maybe a refrigerator or something in there. But this is not like I don't know why anyone would do that other than to just not have a party in their apartment. I mean, in a way, it's a good idea because it feels like it's like no one needs to have a house party. You can have it at the clubhouse and therefore you don't have to bother your fucking neighbors. But I'm like, yeah, I don't think anyone's going to go to that trouble, though. So this garbage bin, and the other thing is when, I'm arguing against it being fancy, the reason there's a garbage bin by the clubhouse is because that's where the mailboxes are. And if there wasn't a garbage bin there would be garbage there. Because people would just like throw garbage, junk mail and stuff. They just want to throw it away. They don't want to have to convey their junk mail. I think like one of the things that makes me very like pessimistic about our society is the number of people who live in my complex who drive to the mailbox. It's crazy. I'm like, I don't know. You don't want to just like stretch your legs for, if you lived the furthest from the mailbox, it was probably a 2-minute walk. And you know what I mean? If I saw someone getting out and they had like some weird brace on their leg or something, I'd be like, oh yeah, totally. You know what I mean? Or like somebody wrapped in a blanket who looks like they've been ill for like the last 10 years, I'd be like, totally. And I'm sure that someone here is in that situation. You know what I mean? It's a weird thing where you're like, I can't be mad at an individual person because I'm like, well, I don't know, maybe they got something going on. But I can be mad at the collective because I know they don't all have something going on. I know, or, you'll see the same person and they're walking their dog later. And I'm like, buddy, I have a solution for you. So there's a garbage bin there and the wind was intense enough that it, blew it down the street. And it was like in a really weird spot and so on. So, and it was kind of in front of my house. And I was like, well, I'm going to take this back up there because like it's going to get dark and someone's going to hit this with their car and whatever. And also I was like, I'd rather have a garbage bin at the clubhouse than garbage, not in a bin. I guess the garbage is there either way. It's just a matter of whether or not it's binned or uncontained, unconstrained, just berserker flying around. So I, right the garbage can and I'm pushing it and I'm holding the handles. And so it's like one of those 2-wheel garbage bins. We all know the kind. And it's got the flap lid on the top, right? So I'm pushing it into the wind and the wind catches the lid, flips it up with tremendous force, and it smashes me right in the face because both of my arms are like holding the handle. You know what I mean? It's like fucking Fabio getting hit in the face with a seagull on a roller coaster because his hands are on the handrail, I assume, because he's scared. It was a lot like that. Me getting injured to the face was a lot like Fabio getting a face injury. I think that's primarily what most people were picturing, but just in case you've never seen me before, there you go. So this thing fucking smashes me in the face and it hurt. I was like, oh my God, like right in the nose. And I'm pushing the bin and I start feeling this weird sensation on my face and realize like I definitely have not just a bloody nose, but an intensely bloody nose. Meanwhile, the wind is blowing still. So it's like whipping droplets of blood all over the place. Like it's just shooting them all over, flying around. And I get the bin back over to the thing and it's like the top is covered in blood. And then I have to walk back to my place and, you know, I left a blood trail the whole way. If I can walk the whole way twice out and back, bleeding intensely, fighting the wind with a giant garbage bin, fuckers, you can go get your mail. So I get to the front door, you know, and Poonmaster Flex was work from home that day. And I was like, hey, I'm okay, but can you get me a rag? And she did and was like, oh my God. And, you know, it's hard. It was a disaster because like between the wind and the blood, I was in a tough spot as far as like I'm slinging blood everywhere. Totally accidentally. And like I've got it on my hands and it's on my jacket and it's on my pants. You know, it's everywhere. And like just in the course of trying to get undressed, it's like I got some blood on the wall and like it was a whole thing. So I get in the shower and I try to clean it out as best I can because I'm not like and I've got like a huge gash like on the bridge of my nose. And it's, you know, it's definitely swollen and stuff, but I'm not like the biggest like clean out wounds guy. Like I have become more so in the last several years because of like, I don't know, like I have a shit immune system. Who knows? But in this case, I was like, I mean, the implement that injured you was a literal garbage can. Seems to warrant maybe some TLC here. So I get my face cleaned up, sort of, and then, you know, get showered and stuff, and then put a bandage across it, and just am like, well, I guess this is, you know, now this is what I'm doing. And I was like, you know, and it hit me in the nose, and I could feel like couple of my teeth hurt, but I don't think it hit me in the tooth. I think it's like, you know how when you have like a really bad sinus infection and your teeth hurt? I was like, I kind of think that's what's going on. And like, I didn't have any injury elsewhere on my head. It was just right on the bridge of the nose. So I just started working again and then rolls around to like 5 o'clock and it's still bleeding quite a bit. And, you know, Poonmaster Flex was like, do you think you need to go to urgent care? And I was like, I don't know. Do you think I need to go to urgent care? And she's like, maybe. I don't know. Like, shouldn't it be done bleeding by now? And I was like, yeah, probably. You know, I don't know. And so we did. I was kind of like, well, maybe we should just go because, like, whatever. It's probably better to go than to not go. And then have been like, ooh, I should have gone to urgent care. Because, you know, I did think like, well, maybe if I got smashed in the head, a doctor will be like, we should check you out and make sure you're not going to like Liam Neeson's wife here. For non-American listeners, by the way, this is like the reality of living in America is like, you wouldn't necessarily go to urgent care for something like this unless you don't really go unless you're pretty sure you need to. Because it will cost money. Like it's not going to be free no matter what happens. And the best outcome you can hope for is that you have types of insurance that, you know, cover it. And it only requires you to do things like send them 40 emails or so. And then eventually it'll be covered, you know, but, yeah, just in case you're not from the States and you're like, why wouldn't you just, you know, what's the hesitation here? It's not because I'm a tough boy and I'm like, I don't want to go. It's because I'm like, yeah, you go and it sucks going. But then also, So we go to urgent care and the office is pretty full. which I expected because I keep hearing about, flu and COVID and stuff. And I was like, it's probably going to be full. So we get there and the lady's like, well, it was 5, I don't know, 5 or 5:15, 5:30 when we got there, and it closes at 6. And I was like, does an urgent care close at 6? Does that mean like lights out at 6? Or does that mean like a restaurant where they're like, well, kind of, if you walk through the door up till 6, you're a dick, but whatever. Guys, restaurants. Let me explain this to you. A sit down restaurant, how it works. What you need to do is be like, last tables will be sat at X. So in other words, like if you want to close at don't even worry about what time you're closing. Just say like, we seat people until 6 p.m. Well, that would be, we seat people until 10, because it's like, we want to get out of here at 11. But, instead of saying we close at 11 and then some asshole comes in at 10:45. So, she's like, yeah, I mean, we're closing at 6 and we're full. So, we can't get you in. And she's like, but you can go to our other urgent care, with this same system in Johnstown. And Poonmaster Flex was talking to her and was like, okay, where is that? And it was like showing her on a map or something. And I was like, there's no fucking way we're going to Johnstown. Like, you don't know, but that's like a half hour away. And I was like, there's no way. Because also the urgent care in Johnstown closed an hour later. But I was like, well, it closes an hour later, but it's going to take us a half hour to get there. So it only buys us a half hour. And I'm not entirely convinced that they're not full. And that when we get there, they won't be like, yeah, sorry. And then we'll have driven there for nothing. And so I was like, fuck it. I guess we'll just have to go to the hospital. And you have to go to the emergency room, even though I'm like, this isn't like an emergency. You know what I mean? An emergency is like when we were waiting to be seen by the doctor, and there was a lady talking a lot about how she was having a lot of issues with an IUD. And, this had been an ongoing thing. And she seemed to be in a lot of pain. And, I felt a tremendous sympathy for her and whatever. And I was like, this seems like an emergency. You know what I mean? Like that, this seems to qualify. So we go to the emergency room and they actually saw us pretty quick. And, the guy who was like admitting me or whatever, because they have all my paperwork there because that's where I go to the doctor, is like the same building. And then, you go in and then they basically ask 10 different people, ask you the same question about what happened. Everyone assumed I had gotten punched, I think, which I was like, I get it, maybe. But, I was like, is that why most people come in here or whatever? But I was like, no, I got hit in the face with a garbage bin. And the first guy I was telling about this, I was like, yeah, it was the wind blew it up. And he's like, this wind, man, it's bringing a bunch of people in. And he was telling us about some guy who was working construction and got his hand crushed through like a bunch of machinations that involved the wind. And I was like, yeah, I mean, it sucks. And I was like, I guess the plus, like, it must have looked pretty hilarious. Like if someone saw that garbage bin hit me in the face, it's like, that's like a classic comedy bit. And he was like, I don't know. I don't think anything's funny. I just want the wind to stop. He was just done. And I was like, okay. And I was like, if we hit like shift change, you know what I mean? Is this about to be the end? So then a doctor comes in. She's basically like, I don't know, it looks okay. And she's like, I don't know if we need to do any stitches. She's like, but maybe we'll do some glue. And I was like, yeah, that's fine. Whatever. Whatever you think is best. And so they glued it shut. And she's like gluing it shut. And she's like getting ready to do it. She's like, I'm having trouble getting it to stop oozing. Like she's telling me that like it's like something I can do. You know what I mean? Hold your breath. Can you stop this blood oozing for a second? And I'm like, no, that's why I'm here. But anyway, she glued it up or whatever. And then after that doctor, we had to see like the real doctor, I guess. And the real doctor just came in and was like, okay, you're probably going to have some soreness. You can take whatever and don't touch it, And she's like, if you've ever gotten super glue on your fingers and you kind of want to rub it off, that's what it's going to feel like. And don't do it. Just leave it alone. And then, she was like, you'll probably be pretty sore and, it'll probably swell up, and it should go down in the next few days. And so I turned to Cassie, Poonmaster Flex, and was like, will you cancel all my modeling gigs coming up on Monday? And Poonmaster Flex was like, the doctor just looked at me when you said that, and she was like not having it. She was not happy. And Poonmaster Flex is trying to convey with her eyes, like, I'm sorry. He's reached this phase of life, where that's the joke he has to make, because that's the joke any idiot would make in this situation. It's not even a good joke particularly. But yeah, so, she was not impressed. And Foodmaster Flex was like, you don't really embarrass me like very much in public, and she's like, that's probably in the top 5 of how embarrassed I've been, whatever. And I was like, yeah. And I felt bad about it because I was like, oh, this doctor, I wasted her time or whatever. But I was like, I don't know, man. Like, I'm the one with the fucking busted face. You know what I mean? Does that not earn me? I'm going to have to pay for an emergency room visit. Does that not earn me a little bit of grace? Making one little joke, one quick little joke. Come on. And it was at my own expense. Maybe the doctor felt like I was fishing, like she was supposed to jump in and be like, oh, no, you're beautiful. And I was like, no, if you did that, I would actually be upset. Because I'd be like, okay, what's wrong with you? Did you look at my charts? Can I get someone else to look at my chart? I don't trust your opinion on visuals. So anyway, that happened. But, I was mostly okay. Like, I actually didn't feel too bad or anything. It hurt. But, I wouldn't say it, like, affected my life. And we were able to go the next day to... Okay, so I signed up, me and we have like 3 friends who live in the Denver area, right? And we intend to see each other all the time and see each other like twice a year. Because, it's just how things are. And so I was like, we need to like hang out more and like figure out a way to do this. So I was like, you know what I'm going to do? We walked a 5K with Poonmaster Flex's dad on Thanksgiving. And I was like, oh, it was good. Like, you go, you meet, there's a designated time, whatever. So I was like, all right, that's what we're doing. So I signed us up to walk this 5K, and I looked and I found one that was, close-ish to them. And it was like, run for donuts, 5K. And it was like, there will be donuts. And I was like, all right, this sounds pretty good. And I signed us all up. And then as we were getting closer to it, I started being like, I don't know, this seems kind of unofficial. Because like there were different waves. Okay, so there was like a 5K, a 10K, and a half marathon. But what was really weird is like the course was an out and back. And, normally you run or walk a 5K or whatever, it's usually a loop, right? And you kind of end up fairly close to wherever you started. And that's the ideal way to run something like that, because then it's like, oh yeah, so if you end up where you started, then you don't have to figure out how the fuck to get back to your car or whatever. Because that's what we all do. We drive to a place so we can run. And then I make fun of people who do the same thing, but on a jet ski. So it was an out and back thing, but even weirder than that, it wasn't out and back and then you've done 5K. You had to do out and back twice to do the 5K. And then you had to do it 4 times to do the 10K. And then to do the half marathon, you had to do it. I'm not going to do the math, but it was like an asinine number of times. And also, I think the half marathon would technically finish somewhere in between the beginning and the turnaround point. Like it was some indeterminate spot in between those 2 spots. They had 3 waves. You could start at 7:30, 8, or 8:30. And so I pretty early on was like, hey, can we be in the 8:30 wave? Because then, we could leave at like 6:30 in the morning instead of, I don't know, fucking 5. And the people were like, oh, sure. And, we got another email later that went out to all participants that was like, make sure to sign up for your wave because, there'll be about 20 people in each wave. And I was like, oh, that's pretty small. Okay. So then we get there and it's at this park and there's not much going on. You know what I mean? I was like, where's the race? And we start walking around and we're walking up to it and there are these guys behind us talking. And the one guy is like, yeah, so there's no timing. He's like, I guess they said they'll time you if you want them to, but you don't, but they're not like doing that by default. And I was like, that's kind of weird. So we get up to the registration table. They have numbers. And here's the thing too. I mean, they had t-shirts and those came in the mail and they were like American Apparel t-shirts. So they're not like, if I was going to, a hot topic of debate leading up to the race was like, is this a scam? Like, is this just someone doing a money-making scheme? Or is this a legitimate race? I mean, and it could be both. You know what I mean? I was like, well, I don't know. I'm not in that phase of life where I'm like, well, I'm trying to run a blazing 5K time. So, and even if I was trying to run a blazing 5K time, I would not elect to do it at a race that's got a, 180-degree turn that you have to make 3 times in the course of the race. So we get our numbers, we have t-shirts, and then we go up to the starting line and I was like, do we just go? And she's like, what wave are you in? And I was like, 8:30. And she's like, okay, yeah, you can just go. And we just started walking. And we walked out and back twice. And then we were done. And they had medals. They were like generic finisher medals that I'm sure, were like, you get 144 of them on Amazon or whatever. I couldn't believe though, because we're leaving and I was like, do you think anyone, and there were donuts, but it was like one box of, grocery store donuts, which I am not going to turn my nose up at a grocery store donut. And you better believe I ate one. However, I feel like if you're doing a specific run for donuts, I'm like, I feel like the expectation is raised. You know what I mean? Raised and glazed. Because, I don't know. Like, it's like a whole event. And it's like the brand of it is donut. You know what I mean? Like, here's what makes this special is it's donut related is what makes it special. I don't know. But, so, in conclusion, I don't know if it was a scam or a poorly run fundraiser, but either way, it was, kind of a scam, a quasi scam. It wasn't like a very official race, but I had to wonder because as we were leaving, Poonmaster Flex and I were discussing, and I was like, do you think anyone was running the half marathon? And she's like, I think so. I think there might have been because there were definitely people doing 10K. Because, we saw people going out and back like the whole time we were going and we were walking at a leisurely pace. And so I'm like, well, these people have certainly done 2 laps and are still going. So they must be going farther than 5K. But I was like, it would be maddening. That would be the weirdest way to run a half marathon. I mean, in a way, I was like, we should have done the half, man. That would have been so weird. It'd be like, I've run, you'd look at like a Strava map or something, and there's like all of Denver, and there's just one deep red line because you've overcrossed it 25 times or something. So I don't know if it was a scam per se, because I'm like, well, how could it, I can't call it a scam in as much as I'm like, I mean, they did deliver everything they promised, right? There were donuts, there were t-shirts, there were finisher medals, there was a starting line, there were other people, there were bib numbers. So I'm like, it had really everything these kinds of things have. It didn't have results, I guess. I don't know that you could go anywhere and see the results of the race. I mean, I guess I could just claim I won. That was the other thing is I was like, I think if I ever wanted to like win a race, this is like the race. The kind I just need 1/4 step up from that. You know what I mean? And for all I know, some cross country kid will show up and just fucking blow me out of the water. But I'm like, you just got to find one that's like in January, it's fucking freezing, and it's like on a terrible course that no one would ever want to be on. But it did make me wonder. I was like, maybe this is like a good way to, a money making scheme. Just like you find a little trail in a park, you do an out and back on it. And I'm like, I don't know, you don't have to get like a parade permit or anything, right? Like, So then we went and ate breakfast at a airport diner. At like this there's like a tiny airport near there. And it's like where all, the fancy people fly in on private planes. And then people like me sit in the diner of that and judge them. And I was like, you know what? I realized sitting there, like, I guess nobody who flies in here probably ever goes to this diner. Because if you're flying in on your private plane, it's like, well, I fucking ate on the plane because, they have the food I want. Procuring food is not something that you think about, right? But it was funny because, like, we sat in there and then judged all the people in the private planes. Like, a guy flew in and he had his name was on the side of the plane. I think he was like an attorney or something like that. And I was like, that's so gauche. You know what I mean? Like, a real rich person doesn't need to put their fucking name on the side of a plane. But also, I was like, who sees that? Like, the only people who see that are the fucking people at this diner and the diner at the other airport, wherever you left from. And I guess there were a bunch of people flying in because there was a Denver Broncos game that day, and so there were people flying in for that. And I was like, that is such a weird life to consider. Like, it would never occur to me. In 40 whatever years of being a human, it's never occurred to me to drive to Denver to see a Broncos game. You know what I mean? That's like one thing I did with my dad, like one time, and it was his idea, and it was hot as fuck, and we were like sitting in the sun, and it was just like, it was miserable, and we were like so high up, and you couldn't even see anything. And I just remember I had this giant Coke, and I was drinking it because it was cold, but it wasn't cold very long, and all the ice melted, and we left before the end. And that's like the one time I've gone to a live Broncos football game. I only went to like one high school football game, and I was so bored. I was like, is this seriously what you guys do on Fridays? Like, this is fucking stupid. I say all this, I just finished the book Football by Chuck Klosterman, because that's his new book. He has 2 books coming out this year, and one is Football, and it's about football, and it's great. I recommend it. You should read it, even if you don't like football. I mean, I say all that. Obviously, I don't give a flying fuck about football, but it's still a great book. Read it. Football by Chuck Klosterman. Recommended to you by Peter Dirk. So yeah, you just get all judgmental about the different. You're like, well, it's not a very big plane. You know what I mean? It is fun to sit there and just judge these assholes, though, because you're like, what is wrong with your life? Like, I feel like there's something wrong with your life if you're like flying on a private jet to see a football team. I'm just like, you just don't know what to do with money. Like, there must be something more entertaining you could be doing than this, right? This is the best thing you could think of to do with a bunch of money. I don't know, man. So we get home, and then starting the next day, I felt kind of fucked up. And I had a full weekend/week of recovery from what I'm pretty sure was food poisoning. Now, I want to be very clear. I feel like every bozo who gets the flu is like, I'm pretty sure I had food poisoning. You know what I mean? And it's like, but I think most people get the flu and for some reason don't want to admit they had the flu. Or maybe it's like the thing of, they have the flu and they're sick, but they want to be like, this was done to me. You know what I mean? This wasn't just a random virus that happened to me. This was an attack. Or, they want to be like, I never get sick. Well, food poisoning, that's different. Or they just like, I don't know. There's something weird about admitting like it's flu as opposed to food poisoning. Like food poisoning is fine to get. You know what I mean? It's because you ate a giant sandwich that was supposed to get thrown away at the end of a party. And then you kept fishing it out of the garbage until it turned purple. And then you couldn't take your kids to Duff Gardens. So they went with their aunt and she learned something about life or something. But anyway, I am not apt to say that I had food poisoning unless I'm pretty sure. And I would say that in my entire life, I've had it twice that I can completely identify and am fairly certain was food poisoning. Once was in my early 20s, and I came back from Chicago, and my uncle insisted that I bring back like a cooler of a bunch of hot dogs and Italian sausage and stuff. Now, this sausage was delicious. However, it turned at some point. And I know that it was food poisoning because I ate it as well as my roommate at the time, Travis, ate it. And we both got sick, almost immediately, violently ill. And that was pretty much, I was like, okay, that seems pretty like solid evidence that happened. We both got sick at the same time. And both had, well, opposite ends of the spectrum, really. But the other thing is, like, I rarely throw up when I have the flu. I usually just feel like I'm dying in every other way, but that's not one of the ways. And boy, this brought me right back. That was the last time in my early 20s was the last time I threw up for being sick. Not from booze, not from drinky sick. That was when I was in my late 20s. And we, grew up outside of a bunch of different places. But that's a story from many podcasts ago that we don't need to go over again. Point being, I don't do it a lot. And so when I do it, it's notable for me. And, my stomach really hurt, and like it just felt very sharp pain, which isn't something that usually happens to me with flu. And I just, at some point I knew it was coming, you know what I mean? And I was like, well, here we go. And it, as it always does, surprised me with its force and violence. So a couple bouts of that, and then just like the rest of the week was just trying to recover from flu. I couldn't even drink water really the first day. It's like I could take a couple little sips of water. I maybe got in, I don't know, 20 ounces of water throughout the day. And that's after being dehydrated because I both threw up and diarrhea. I did it all, baby. And so I was like, I think I'm pretty dehydrated. But I felt like shit. The first night being that sick, I was like, I think this is one of the worst nights of my life. Like it was an endless night of being sick. Then I spent the rest of the week trying to recover and watching Star Trek: The Next Generation. And I was thinking, okay, if you've never seen Star Trek: The Next Generation, I'm assuming you're still familiar with things like the transporter, beam me up. And it transports them wherever and then transports them back. And it was explained in an episode that, the way this works is it basically takes your atoms apart and sends them and then, reassembles them. And it has like a filter on it, right? And that's how you can get beamed back from like an alien world and you're not going to come up with like Cardassian flu or whatever, right? Like if you caught that germ would get filtered out. Because it recombines all of your atoms the way it was when you left, not the way And so if there's any alteration, it fixes it. So I was telling Poonmaster Flex, like, there's an episode where a guy says he caught a cold from a Cardassian, and I was like, that doesn't make any sense. Wouldn't the transporter get rid of that? And I was like, why can't I look forward to a future where illness is wiped out? You know what I mean? Like, and it seems like in Star Trek world, they've wiped out like major illnesses, except for the occasional like weird virus that does something like, I don't know, makes Beverly Crusher want to fuck Captain Picard or whatever. But like, I just was like, it'd be nice to live in a cold and flu free world. And Poonmaster Flex was talking to a coworker about it who's a Star Trek fan. And this person was like, yeah, I think your husband is right. However, I like that, they still have the common cold or whatever, because it's like very humanizing, in the Star Trek universe to still have the common cold. And I was like, those are the words of someone who has never spent 10 days in bed because of a cold. You know what I mean? Who doesn't spend, I don't know, 2.5 weeks of every year just wishing they were dead. Because for me, I'm like, this is like the ultimate part of the optimistic future. I mean, yeah, sure, exploring space is great. And like, making diplomatic relationships with all kinds of alien races and learning their cultures and customs and technologies. And like, yeah, this is amazing. But, it'd be nice. You couldn't fix the cold. You can travel at warp 9, whatever the fuck that is. But, you'll still be sneezing into a tissue. What the fuck? Why can't I go to Dr. Beverly Crusher, the dancing doctor, and she can inject me with one of those things that's just like, and then I'm fine? You know what I mean? That seems like it would work. They built Lieutenant Worf, a Klingon, a new spine. They built it outside of his body and then took his spine out and put the new spine in, and then he was fine. They did that and they can't cure a cold. That doesn't make any sense, guys. Come on. Maybe it's like they don't cure colds and stuff because it's like, well, we're going to focus on life-threatening stuff first. I'm like, all right, I could see like they made Geordi a little visor so he can see, right? And I'm like, well, yeah, I can't be that mad that you guys tried to cure blindness before you tried to cure the cold, I guess. You know what I mean? An entire life in the dark versus 2.5 weeks out of the year watching Star Trek, mostly miserable. Yeah, I could see making the other choice. Oh, I could see it. That was a dick thing to say that I didn't even mean. Anyway, and then now I'm mostly recovered. This is a long way of me saying like I meant to try and do this weekly, and I'm still hoping to do this close to weekly this year, but I got behind. But I think it's valid. I think I had some stuff going on. Well, that's going to be it for today. Thanks for listening. If you go to helpfulsnowman.com, there's some stuff there. You can buy some books that I've written that, well, they're books. You could read a book. I don't know. I don't even know why I bother with that. You could subscribe to Patreon, and there's a monthly newsletter in print that'll come to your mailbox, as well as a monthly bonus episode. And this year I'm focusing on mostly regrets I have in my life that I'm trying to forgive myself for. So, that's some rich material. Also, we do Merchmas every year. So, and towards the end of the year, I make some merchandise like the Yeti water bottle that I made last year that commemorates my dead car. Or the beanie I made that is merchandise, not for the podcast in general, but for one specific episode of a podcast. This is my genius marketing idea, is like, what if you made merchandise for every episode instead of making, generalized merchandise? At one time, I was like, I'm going to listen to every episode and make a t-shirt design on Redbubble for every episode. And then I was like, this is a really dumb idea. I mean, I want to do it because it's a dumb idea, and that's why I want to do it. But at the same time, it's like, if I did every dumb idea I ever wanted to do, I'd be doing 7,000 episodes of this, not 500 and whatever. All right. There you go. There's my plugs. Oh, and there's newsletters. You can subscribe to a Helpful Snowman newsletter that's just sort of comedy gold, some might say. And there's also a library newsletter where I talk about more library-ish type stuff. That's for a particular audience, but I don't know, you might like it. What do you know? You might like something. Okay, we'll see you next time.